People always think they would notice something like this, that there would be a moment, something obvious, something that feels wrong immediately, like a switch flipping inside your head, telling you that you're not safe. I used to believe that too. I used to think that if someone was watching me, if someone was paying too much attention, I would feel it right away, that I would react, that I wouldn't let it become something real. But that's not how it happened. It started in a way that didn't feel like anything at all. Just another face in a place full of faces. I first noticed him outside the school gates, but even that feels like the wrong way to say it because noticing him wasn't something that happened suddenly. It was more like realizing he had always been there, standing in the same place, across the street near the fence, just far enough that no one would question it. At first, I didn't think about him. People wait outside schools all the time, for siblings, for friends, for someone who takes longer to come out than expected. He didn't look threatening. If anything, he looked like someone people were used to ignoring. And that's when I recognized him. Not fully at first. Just a feeling of familiarity. Daniel, he had been in my class for years, and yet I don't think I ever really knew anything about him. Not because he was mysterious, but because he never gave anyone anything to know. He didn't talk unless someone spoke to him first. Didn't laugh at jokes, even when everyone else did. Didn't react when people said things that were just slightly cruel enough to hurt. And people noticed that. Not loudly. Not in a way teachers could stop. But in that quiet way people have when they decide someone doesn't belong. I was never part of that. But I also wasn't the kind of person who stepped in. I told myself I was being neutral. Looking back, I think I was just being comfortable. There was only one time I ever spoke to him. I don't even remember what it was about. Something small. Something meaningless. We were standing in the hallway, and I think I asked him a question because he happened to be the closest person there. That's it. That's the whole memory. But I remember the way he looked at me. Not surprised. Not confused. Just focused. Like I had done something important without realizing it. I didn't think about it after that. Not really. But now, standing there outside the school, watching him stand in the same exact place every day, I started to feel something I couldn't explain. Because it wasn't just that he was there. It was the way he stood. Still, patient, like he wasn't waiting for something. Like he already knew exactly when it would happen. And without meaning to, I started noticing when he was looking at me. Not directly. Never directly. But just enough. Just enough that it didn't feel like coincidence anymore. After that, I started noticing things I hadn't paid attention to before. Not because they suddenly appeared, but because once your mind accepts the idea that something might be wrong, it begins to look for proof. At first, it was small. So small that I kept telling myself I was overthinking it. Like the way he was always there before I arrived. It didn't matter what time I left class. It didn't matter if I stayed longer or came out earlier than usual. When I stepped outside, he was already standing in that same place. And it wasn't just that he was there. It was the way he didn't react when others passed him. Didn't look at them. Didn't acknowledge anyone. Except, sometimes, he would look at me. Not in a way that was obvious. If someone else had been watching, they probably wouldn't have noticed it at all. But I did. It was always the same. A slight shift of his head. A pause that lasted just a second too long. Like he wasn't just seeing me, but confirming something. I started changing the way I left school. Not dramatically. Just small things. Leaving with different people. Stopping in the hallway longer than usual. Taking a different exit once or twice. And every time, after a few seconds, or a minute at most, I would see him again. Not running, not searching, just there. Like he had already adjusted. That was the first time I felt something that wasn't just discomfort. It wasn't panic, it wasn't even fear yet, it was something quieter. A kind of awareness that didn't leave, even when I tried to ignore it. because the more I paid attention, the more it felt like this wasn't new. Like this had been happening for a long time, and I had just never noticed. That thought stayed with me longer than anything else. Not the fact that he was there, not even the way he looked at me, but the idea that I might have been seeing for days or weeks before I ever realized it. And once that thought settles in, it doesn't really go away. It follows you. I started feeling it outside of school too. At first, it didn't even make sense. I would be walking home and something would feel off. Not enough to stop. Not enough to turn around immediately. Just enough to make me aware of my surroundings in a way I hadn't been before. Like the space behind me wasn't empty anymore. The first time I actually turned around, there was no one there. Just an empty sidewalk, a few parked cars, closed windows. I remember standing there for a moment, feeling slightly embarrassed. Like I had let my imagination get ahead of me, but then, as I kept walking, I noticed something strange. A reflection in one of the dark windows. For just a second, I thought I saw movement behind me. Not close, not clear, but enough to make my chest tighten in a way I couldn't explain. I didn't turn around again. I just kept walking. A little faster than before. And for the rest of the way home, I had the same feeling that I wasn't alone on that street, even though every time I looked, there was no one there. For a while, I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, that I had simply started paying attention to things that had always been there. That once you notice someone, you begin to see them everywhere. That explanation worked. For a few days, until it didn't. It happened on a normal afternoon. Nothing unusual. Classes ended at the same time. The hallway was loud. Everyone was rushing out like always. I remember feeling almost calm that day, like whatever tension inside me was finally starting to fade. And then I opened my locker. At first, I didn't notice it. My books were slightly out of place, but that wasn't unusual. I was never very organized. But then I saw it. A folded piece of paper. It wasn't hidden or pushed between books. It was placed right in the center as if it was meant to be found immediately. I didn't touch it right away. Something about it made me pause, not fear exactly, but a quiet certainty that I already knew where it came from. When I finally unfolded it, my hands didn't feel steady. The handwriting was careful, almost too careful, like every letter had been written slowly. I see you when you don't look. I read it once, then again, and something inside me shifted. Because that wasn't random. That was someone describing something real. I looked around the hallway. People were still moving, still talking, living their normal lives. No one noticed anything. And for a second, I wondered how long it had been there. Minutes? Hours? Or longer? The thought made my chest tighten. Because if it had been there before I arrived, then someone had access to my locker. Someone had been close enough to open it, close enough to stand exactly where I was, and I hadn't noticed anything. I folded the note back slowly, not because I wanted to keep it, but because I didn't know what else to do. Throwing it away felt wrong. That was the moment when everything stopped feeling distant. Before that, it had been observations, glances, coincidences. But this was different. This meant intention. I closed my locker without taking anything else. For the rest of the day, I couldn't focus. Every sound felt louder. Every movement felt closer. I kept thinking about one thing. Not the note itself, but the sentence. I see you when you don't look. The more I thought about it, the worse it felt. That sentence didn't just describe watching. It described timing. It meant he knew exactly when I wasn't paying attention. And once you understand that, you start questioning everything. Every step, every moment, every second where your back is turned. I left school earlier than usual that day. I just wanted to get home. But halfway there, I slowed down because something felt wrong again. That same feeling I couldn't explain. And this time, I didn't wait. I turned around. And for the first time, I saw him. Not across the street. not at a distance, closer, much closer than before, standing still, watching me. And when our eyes met, he didn't look away. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. It wasn't like the other times. Before, there had always been distance, a street between us, a crowd, something that made it feel less real. Just him and me. He was closer than I expected, close enough that I could see details I had never noticed before. His face looked thinner, more tired, like he hadn't been sleeping properly. But his eyes were exactly the same. Still, focused, locked, on me in a way that didn't feel natural. I felt my body tense without thinking, like something inside me was already preparing to leave, to move, to get away. But I didn't. I just stood there because a part of me still wanted to believe I was misunderstanding everything, that there was a normal explanation that if I just spoke, it would become something small again, something manageable. So I did. "Why are you following me?" My voice didn't sound like I expected it to. It was quieter, less steady. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me. And for a moment, I had this strange feeling that he wasn't surprised by the question, like he had been waiting for it. "I'm not," he said finally. His voice was soft, careful, almost rehearsed. I shook my head. That's not true. There was a pause, and then, very slightly, he stepped closer. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me to feel it. "I just go where you go," he said. The way he said it made something drop in my chest. Not because of the words themselves, but because he didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with them. "That's the same thing," I said. He frowned slightly, like he was trying to understand something that didn't quite make sense to him. "I don't get too close," he added quickly. Like that was important, like that made it okay. "I stay where you can't feel it." That sentence. That was the moment I felt real fear. Because that wasn't normal. That wasn't someone being awkward. That was someone who had thought about this. "A lot. You need to stop," I said. This time my voice was sharper, more controlled. "You can't do this. It's not normal." He nodded immediately. Too fast. "I know," he said. And for a second, I almost believed him. "I just wanted to see you," he added. There was something in his voice then, something that didn't fit with everything else. Not anger, not frustration. Something closer to relief, like just being able to say it out loud meant something to him. "I don't care," I said, and I meant it, or at least I wanted to. "You have to stop following me. If you don't, I'm going to report you." That's when everything changed. His expression shifted, not into anger, not into something aggressive, but into something worse. Panic? Like I had just said the one thing he wasn't prepared for? "No," he said quickly, too quickly. "I won't get closer. I won't." He took another small step forward. And that's when I realized something. He didn't understand boundaries. Not the way normal people do. To him, this was already him trying. After that conversation, I told myself it was over. Not because I believed him, but because I needed to believe that saying it out loud had changed something, that drawing a line would make it real. For the rest of the day, I stayed around people, didn't walk alone, didn't stop anywhere. And for a few hours, I almost felt normal again, almost. But something stayed with me. The way his face had changed. Not angry, not threatening, just afraid. And that didn't make me feel safer. It made me feel like I had just done something I didn't understand yet. That evening, I left later than usual. The streets were quieter, the air felt heavier. I remember checking behind me more than once, not constantly, just enough to tell myself I was being careful. And for a while, there was nothing. No one, no movement, just the sound of my own steps echoing slightly in the empty street. I started to relax. That was the mistake, because I didn't hear him at first. I felt it, that same shift in the air, that same awareness that something was no longer empty behind me. And then footsteps. Too close. I turned around and he was there, closer than he had ever been before, so close that I could see the way his hands were shaking, like he was trying to hold himself together and failing. "You said you'd stop," I said. My voice came out sharper than I expected, more afraid. "I am," he said quickly. "I am stopping." But he wasn't. He was still standing there, still too close, still watching me like nothing had changed. "You need to go," I said, taking a step back, then another. He followed. Not fast. Not aggressively. Just enough to close the distance again, like he couldn't let it widen even for a second. "I just needed to see you one more time," he said. That sentence made something in my chest tighten instantly, like it wasn't what he meant to say, like it meant something else. "You're not listening to me," I said. "I'm serious. If you don't leave, I'm calling the police." That's when it happened. Not slowly. Not in a way I could react to. Just suddenly. His face changed again. Not panic this time. Something sharper. Something breaking. "I didn't want you to be scared," he said. And then he moved. I barely saw it, just a quick motion. Something in his hand and then pain. Sharp, blinding. The world tilted sideways. The ground felt too close, too fast. And the last thing I remember was the look on his face. Not anger, not hatred, just complete, overwhelming panic, like he had just realized what he'd done a second too late. Everything went dark. When I woke up, everything felt distant. Not quiet, just far away, like the world had been pushed a few steps back and I hadn't caught up to it yet. There were voices, soft and careful, someone asking me questions, my name, what happened, if I could remember anything. I tried to answer, but the words didn't come out the way I expected. Everything felt slow, disconnected. The ceiling above me was too bright. The light didn't move, didn't flicker, didn't change. It just stayed there. And for a moment, I focused on that instead of everything else, because it was easier than remembering. But memory doesn't really wait for you. It comes back in pieces. The street, the sound of footsteps, his voice, and then that moment. I closed my eyes, not because I was tired, but because I didn't want to see it again. Someone said I was lucky, that it could have been worse, that I didn't hit my head the wrong way, that I would recover. They said it like it was something reassuring, like it was supposed to make sense of what happened. But it didn't, because nothing about it made sense. Not the way it started. Not the way it ended. And especially not him. I didn't ask about Daniel at first, not because I didn't want to know, but because I already felt like I did. Still, eventually I asked. The answer was simple, too simple. They found him later that night, not far from where it happened. He didn't run, didn't try to hide. He just stopped. I don't remember exactly what words they used. They spoke quietly, carefully, like they didn't want to say it too directly. But I understood. He couldn't live with it. That's what they meant. That he had done something he couldn't take back and didn't know how to exist after that. I lay there for a long time after that, longer than I can measure properly, because once you hear something like that, everything else feels different. The fear doesn't disappear, but it changes. It becomes something heavier, something harder to explain, because I kept thinking about one thing, not the way he followed me, not the notes, not even that moment on the street, but the way he looked at me right before everything happened. There was no anger in it, no intention to hurt me, just panic, like he had been trying to hold something together for a long time, and it finally slipped. And somehow that's the part that stayed with me, because it made me realize something I wish I didn't understand. That he never meant for it to become this. He just didn't know where to stop. And by the time he realized, it was already too late.